Okay, Brian, it's that time of week where we do our predictions. Clemson, Georgia. That's the one we are talking about right now.
That's the biggest game of the weekend.
No question.
Biggest
Number 3,
game of the
Clemson.
weekend.
Number 5, Georgia. They're playing in Charlotte, right? They're playing in an NFL stadium, so obviously that's a big deal. Saturday, it's a night game, ABC, 7:30. Yeah, you're right. Biggest game of the weekend if you're not a Notre Dame fan, I'm just saying. But biggest game of the weekend, lots of storylines here. Brian, what sticks out to you?
To me, there's huge college football playoff implications. And for all the people that want to expand the college football playoff, this is the kind of game you lose when that happens, because this game no longer has the implications that it has. Both teams, to me, this is huge for both teams, right? If Georgia loses, they're in a single elimination the rest of the year. If Georgia loses the opener and runs the table, they're in the playoff. I mean, their schedule is such they'd have to beat probably Bama in the conference title game. They got to beat Florida. I mean, they've got a tough enough schedule. It's not a gauntlet, but it's tough enough where they're gonna be in at 13-1, or 12-1. Clemson is in single. I have a hard time seeing Clemson losing this game and still being in the college football playoff unless there's just a bunch of 1-loss and some 2-loss champions, because the reputation that the ACC has. I mean, there were people that thought maybe Clemson might not get in a couple years ago when they were undefeated in 2019 because their schedule is so bad. Now, you know, it wasn't necessarily their fault that Texas A&M wasn't very good that year, right? I mean, they did try to schedule out a conference, but this is one of those games, and this is also the kind of game where if Clemson wins this game, they can then sustain an upset at some point in time in the regular season and still get in.
Because they've got that win on their resume, right?
Right, exactly, which is just like what we saw in 2016 when, you know, they did lose to Pitt late in the year, but they had a big win over a highly ranked Florida State team that year. They had a big win over Lamar Jackson in Louisville. They had a big road win over a ranked Auburn team that year. You know, so you look at it and you say, okay, that they don't really have that win this year, Vince, if they lose this game. I mean, they've got, you know, you look at Clemson's schedule the rest of the year, it's not pretty. It's, you know, their big games are now at NC State, at Pitt, at Louisville, at South Carolina, home against Boston College, home against Florida State. That's not really, you know, they lose this game on a neutral field, it's going to really devastate their playoff resume, in my opinion. They're just going to have to hope for a bunch of teams to have losses this year. So there are big-time playoff implications in this league. And I'm very curious to see kind of what level of pressure does this put on both teams. The loser of this game is going to go into every week the rest of the year with a lot of pressure, because these are two teams that we all view, I think, as legitimate title contenders this season to some degree. And so that's what makes this a fascinating matchup. We rarely get these kind of week one matchups where there's September 4th, there's playoff implications on the line. And that's what I love about the current makeup of college football.
Well, and you took the words right out of my mouth about loving the current makeup of college football, because you're right. This game is so important. It's so important to both teams and its playoff implications right from the jump. If the playoffs are expanded to 12 teams, this game doesn't matter at all.
They could both still lose another game and still get in the playoff.
Right, exactly. I mean, this game literally doesn't matter. It's just, okay, two big names playing each other.
Preseason game, essentially. Yeah.
You know, great, you know, but this game means something. And
which for the loser of that game, they're going to want that 12 expanded thing.
Yeah.
But no, this is what makes the college football regular season the best in all of sports.
Absolutely.
Is that a game on September 4th can have consequences about who's going to be able to play for a championship. I absolutely love it. And it's also an intriguing matchup, Vince. If you're someone who loves football, it's, you know, Georgia's offense is supposed to be much improved this year. You got JT Daniels, a quarterback. You know, they've had some skill player injuries. You know, obviously George Pickens is out. Eric Gilbert's no longer on the team. They're loaded at running back. They should have a really good offensive line. They still have some weapons to work with. JT Daniels, this is his chance to kind of, you know, shine, jump out of the spotlight. Are they going to open up the offense, kind of let him go against what is expected to be a Clemson defense that should be one of the nation's best this year? You know, probably the best defensive line in the country. At least they have a chance to be, you know, with Miles Murphy and Brian Breezy and Tyler Davis coming back. Their front seven is going to be loaded. Their secondary has Andrew Booth, Joseph Christopher. I mean, they've got this is a great defense against what's supposed to be an ascending offense. That's going to be fascinating. And then it's the first game of the post Trevor Lawrence era on offense, and post Travis Etienne. What do we see from Clemson on offense? So really a fascinating game, great matchups, question marks that are going to get answered about these teams, but just a huge, huge game and an opportunity, obviously, for both conferences as a bigger picture to kind of gain some level of, bragging rights, so to speak. And that's something that's going to be a theme in a lot of these first couple weeks is, Pac-12 looking for chances to put some dents into the Big Ten and the SEC, and the ACC going to look for some chances to get some wins over SEC teams and things along those lines. So a lot of bragging rights on the line, but when you look at what else is on the line, the bragging rights are kind of far down the list. This is for who has a chance to play for a championship.
So, Brian, I've asked you when we were talking about our college football predictions about a week ago, we were talking about, who would you rather have as your quarterback at USC, right? JT Daniels or, the guy they got. And you were resounding, it was JT Daniels. So,
I only let you finish the sentence because out of respect for you. Like, I wanted to cut you off. Who would you rather have at USC? I was going to cut you off and say, you need to finish the question. It's JT Daniels.
So, in this matchup, you've got DJ Uiagalelei. He's taking over at Clemson in the post-Trevor Lawrence era. We know that DJ is a very good quarterback, or he has the potential to be that, but we've seen, obviously, we saw him live and in person, at Notre Dame Stadium. Which quarterback would you rather have? Whatever team you have, which quarterback would you rather have in this matchup?
I mean, to me, it's a win-win, Vince. I think the bigger question is who has the better supporting cast.
Okay.
I think JT is a tremendously talented quarterback. He's now, 2 years removed from the knee injury. He should be back to health. He's extremely talented. DJ's talented. Obviously, JT has more experience, having started a full season at USC back in, 2018 now, right?
Yeah,
which should have been his senior year of high school.
Crazy.
And then, of course, he started about half the year, a little maybe less than half the year last year for Georgia. DJ just has the 2 starts under his belt. So if you're going to say 2 great quarterbacks and you had to pick one, I'm going with the guy with more experience, and that would be JT. Okay. I think that DJ has more physical God-given ability. I think JT's the more polished passer. Also has some impressive God-given ability. But he's the more polished passer, the more savvy guy, the more experienced guy. He earned a lot of respect from me with the way he took that, went after that Cincinnati defense. It was aggressive defense. He was willing to take shots, attack down the field. I think he's poised for a big year. The question is are Clemson's weapons good enough to score on the Alabama defense? But also, are JT's weapons good enough, even more so? Are his weapons good enough to score on the Clemson defense? That's the even bigger story is, and you look at Georgia's defense should be pretty good, but they had some big personnel losses last year. Clemson's got some really talented players coming back. Obviously, getting Justin Ross back is huge for them if he's back to full speed. But when you lose George Pickens, who was supposed to be Georgia's top receiver, you lose Eric Gilbert, Darnell Washington's not 100%. I have more questions about the personnel around JT Daniels than I do from a skill standpoint. Clemson, the opposite is true when you start talking about the offensive line and the run game, right? So which one carries more weight? That's the matchup to me that most intrigues me is whose offense plays the best against who's really good defense. I think that's even the more intriguing thing than even necessarily who's the better quarterback. It's who's supporting cast steps up and plays the best.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think Clemson's offense is going to look a lot different than obviously it did under Trevor Lawrence. And that's nothing against DJ Uiagalelei. It's just a fact that he's a different kind of quarterback.
Right.
And they don't have the dynamic runner that Etienne was standing behind him. Right. I mean, you're probably going to see a lot of time from the Shipley kid, who's a true freshman. I mean, this is his first college game.
Yeah.
Right?
And look, Lynn J. Dixon and Will Shipley are really good football players.
Sure.
They're not Etienne.
Right, exactly.
They're not.
Right.
And look, Justin Ross is back, but look, they lost Cordell Powell and Amari Rogers. Those are 2 really good football players.
Right.
CJ Williams ready to take a step back forward. Can Joseph Ngata, can he step up? Can Frank Ladson finally, play to his potential? There's a lot of question marks about that town around him. no question about it. But there's potential there, just like there's potential at Georgia. Both skill positions at receiver have a lot to prove. Georgia's got the more proven running backs.
Right.
They got probably the deepest running back group in the country. And then, of course, their offensive line is big and physical. So can that unit give JT Daniels enough of a protection to allow him to then make plays in the pass game? That's going to be the key for Georgia. The key for Clemson is going to be, can the offensive line protect DJ, because he's not the runner Trevor was? And then can he then get the ball out to his playmakers, and are they ready to step up? Those are going to be two great question marks and great battles that we're going to be watching the entire game, because that's what we're going to be doing on Saturday night, Vince. You're going to be at your house. I'm going to be in the hotel.
That's
sitting there watching the game, and it's going to be an epic battle. One of the best games of the entire season, and just from a matchup standpoint, we'll see if it plays out that way.
Right.
It's happening right there in week 1.
But you get to actually watch it too, which is different than our normal weekend.
Yes,
which I think is fantastic.
We either be covering Notre Dame or working.
Yeah.
Post game, yes. So it'll be nice
Absolutely.
to sit back and relax and watch some great football.
I have a feeling you're going to be flipping between this game and another one, but we'll get to that, on another video.
No,
but,
I'll have the other one on my computer. This one will be on my TV.
So you're going to do the double screen thing.
This is the prime game. This one will be on my TV.
Okay.
I'll have my iPad on one side and my computer on the other side. Those games will be on the side games.
Okay.
Georgia, Clemson. That's the prime time game on Saturday.
Okay. Well, here we go. Prediction time. Clemson favored by 3 in this game, which I think is very, very interesting. What's your final score?
I went with the 3-point win. I went with the line on this one. I actually made my prediction before I saw the line. I have Clemson winning 30-27. I think at the end of the day, I think Clemson's perimeter skill are going to make more plays than Georgia's backs. I think the supporting cast in the pass game for DJ is going to be better. And I think at the end of the day, Clemson's defensive line is going to be good enough to disrupt the Georgia run game and get after JT Daniels. I have more faith in that pass rush impacting JT than I have with the Georgia pass rush impacting DJ. And that, at the end of the day, is on a neutral field why I decided to go with the Tigers winning by 3. Plus, Georgia still has to prove to me that they can win this kind of game.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I am not a buyer on Georgia right now. They do a great job on the recruiting trail, but when they get to Athens, that's when it kind of all falls apart for them.
They're a lot like Notre Dame. They're going to usually beat but for me to say they are a legitimate contender to Bama or Clemson, Georgia's in the same boat Notre Dame is in. Can you win this kind of game? This is that opportunity for the Bulldogs. Yeah. And it's an opportunity for Clemson to say, hey, look, we were more than Trevor Lawrence. We were more than him. We are a great program, and we're going to keep rolling. What about you, Vince?
I have a lot of faith in Clemson's defense. I think they could be right up there in the top 5 defense in the country when it's all said and done. I think that they contain this Georgia offense. Too many guys missing from this Georgia offense for them to be explosive enough to win this game. I've got Clemson covering, have them winning by 6, 27-21. I think if Clemson gives up more than 3 touchdowns to Georgia, I'd be surprised. So 27-21 for me. So that is our Clemson-Georgia prediction. Make sure you check out Irish Breakdown and check out our other predictions, because we've got a couple other games out there that I think you're going to be interested in. So for Brian, I'm Vince. We'll talk to you next time.